Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Duke, and welcome to another episode of The Takeaway. As always, I am joined by Alex Newman, our staff reporter. Alex, we are actually talking today about an article you just wrote for us this past week, but it's really an extension of an earlier article. And that earlier article dealt with the FAIR Act in California. Let's remind readers and viewers what the FAIR Act in California actually did and when it was passed.
Sure, thanks, Duke. Well, this statute was passed back in 2011, and it purports to require that history textbooks K through 8, so we're talking, little kids here being indoctrinated, have to provide fair and inclusive coverage of homosexuals and lesbians and transgenders and all the rest of the different letters that they keep adding on there, LGBTQI, intersex, queer, whatever things. And so all of the state history books now, all the history textbooks that are used in government schools in California have to play along with the LGBT agenda and the LGBT line that is now going back in time and outing people, which used to be a big faux pas when it comes to homosexuals, right? No one gets to out you. You have to out yourself. But now they're outing even former presidents they're claiming might have been homosexual. So that is the statute, and if your book is found not to provide fair and inclusive coverage of homosexuals in history, then your book is banned.
See, let's unpack this for a minute. There's a lot in what you just said. Start with this idea, first of all, that from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade, the entirety of elementary and middle school, any resource, any textbook must include and be activist, proactive about exposing kids to homosexuality, to transgenderism. Now, I remember being in school, Alex, from the time I was a very little boy in kindergarten, and I never once learned about George Washington's heterosexuality. I never once learned that married couples throughout history were heterosexuals. We never stopped to talk about that. We never stopped to spend time discussing anybody's heterosexuality. Now, though, we're still not going to do that. We are not going to highlight heterosexual figures in history. What we're going to do is whenever a historical figure might have been gay, not even was gay, might have been gay, we are going to stop and foreground that for kids in ways that we have never, ever done with any sexuality in the history of Western education. Is that fair to say?
That's exactly what's happening, unfortunately. And they're literally going back in time and making these outrageous. They're saying George Washington's chief of staff, Baron von Steuben, for example, was probably a homosexual. They're saying that President Buchanan may have been a homosexual because he didn't get married and he had a male roommate one time, and so therefore he might have been a homosexual. So we're going to teach all the kids that. They've got a poet, Walt Whitman, who they're saying now. He was attracted to young males, and but he denied that in public. So we're just going to assume that he was a pedophile or a pederast. So this is just an absolute disgusting abuse of history of children in California. And in fact, some of the publishers, and they're all on board with the LGBT agenda and the progressive anti-Christian worldview, and even some of the textbook publishers said, hey, we really don't have any evidence that these people were homosexuals. We can't just go back and retroactively declare them to be. And so their textbooks got banned. And that is what is happening in the state of California today. And I can assure parents that this is not going to stay limited to California.
It won't. The textbook companies are completely on board with this. But again, slow down a little bit with what you just said. Unpack it a little bit further. You mentioned people like James Buchanan. Pretty much now, any historical figure that did not marry, any historical figure that had any association, close association with a member of the same gender or sex, now we're going to assume they're homosexual. My favorite was a few years ago. I don't know if you remember this, Alex, where a book was written and a lot of fuss was made that Abraham Lincoln was actually gay. And so what you've got here is a classic example. It's not enough to just be single or to hang out with other men if you're a man. Now somebody like Abe Lincoln, who was married, had kids, lifelong devotion to his wife, he must have been gay because at some point or other in the course of his travels while he was stumping for president, stumping for political office, he shared a hotel bed with another man. Now, if we understand in the 18th century, hotels and inns were difficult things to find. There weren't that many of them. And oftentimes people would share beds. And they weren't going to put a strange man in bed with a stranger woman, right? So there would be times where you would bunk with other men. This now is homosexuality. And again, the thing that is so remarkable about this, like you just said, is even some of these liberal progressive textbooks companies have been balking at this, right? What California wants us to say about people in the past is utterly unverifiable. This is not history. This is projecting alternative sexualities back on people so that you can convince modern elementary school kids that homosexual is much more normal than it otherwise would be. Is that fair to say too?
That's exactly right, Duke, and I think that may have been the best summary that I've heard of this so far. I mean, this is just an absolute disgrace that under the guise of history, we're going to pervert history and make claims that have absolutely no substantiation or documentation whatsoever, and we're doing it all to indoctrinate little children to be more favorable to something that virtually every civilization and culture and religion throughout recorded human history has frowned upon and has viewed as a sin, something that the Bible describes as an abomination. Now we're going to go back and retroactively accuse all these random people of perpetrating what the Bible calls abominations for the purpose of trying to make these little children more amenable and make them think that this is acceptable. So this is really an extreme perversion or even an attack on history under the guise of teaching history. We really are living in Orwell's 1984 at this point.
Well, and we move forward. This is the adjunct article you wrote this week for us, Alex, that is a follow-up of that story. And we have news reported from Fox News and other sites that now the state of California is going to absolutely prohibit kids for any reason in elementary and middle school to opt out of any aspect of this revisionist gay history, right? So there's no way for a parent who objects to his 6-year-old being exposed to the idea that Abraham Lincoln was gay without any evidence. The 6-year-old, the mom who wants to protect her 6-year-old from that kind of stuff in first grade is out of luck now.
That's exactly right, and the narrative is, well, you're just a bigot if you want to opt your children out of this, and obviously your children can't graduate and have a real education if they don't know history, and all history now is LGBT history, and so you're a bad parent if you don't agree with this, and there's absolutely no opt-outs. But on the bright side, if there is a silver lining to this, I think that it's going to cause a lot of parents to wake up and realize, because, they still think, oh, maybe we can reform, I can opt out of the sex ed class, all the rest, so I'll keep subjecting my poor children to these institutions. Well, I think this is going to be a line in the sand for a lot of parents, and they're going to say, you know what? If there's no way to opt out of this, then we're just going to opt out of the whole system. And I think that's a good thing. The more kids that are protected from this insanity, the better off we're going to be as a nation.
Fair enough, Alex, but the same state, and this is the slippery slope. You and I have been talking about this for 5-6 years now. One of the consequences of Common Core, not perhaps specifically Common Core, but related to the centralizing of education at the federal level that Common Core represents, is that all this Trojan horse stuff. That California, which is one of the two primary states where all textbooks are tried out, which means they have a hugely disproportionate impact on what goes in other states. California imposes this on the nation, on the textbook administrators, right? The people who write textbooks. Now, if they want their textbooks to have any hope of being adopted in California, which is the first step to getting them adopted anywhere else, they have to conform to all of this. And so one of the really frustrating aspects of this, you say, well, one option is, well, maybe we'll see. With California, I sort of am very skeptical that a lot of moms and dads now are going to run away from the public schools. If they haven't run yet, what makes us think they're going to run now? And what's to stop California? Look at the slippery slope. As we said, it starts by arguing that all kids should be exposed to this. Then, as we predicted would happen, you're going to have to start exposing kids younger, which they're doing. Then we're going to start testing kids and proofreading textbooks to make sure that they conform to this new worldview, which happened. And now they are on the stage where they're going to ban parents from opting out. Why is it more likely that parents will leave the public schools than it is that California will quickly move to ban homeschools and any homeschoolers who don't teach their kids the same homosexual agenda starting from the cradle? If you enjoyed that video, please consider following us online and also consider a tax-deductible donation so we can continue to produce quality videos like the one you just watched. I'm Dr. Duke. Thanks for watching.